Senators, I am Senator Gupta speaking for the first time today. As usual, I am at the leisure of those above me. Please, PO judges, please give me a nod or a signal when you're ready. The stock market crash of 2008 plunged the country into a recession, the worst in 70 years. Senators, we must prevent this from happening again. First of all, the Great Recession had many causes, but bad banking practices enabled by repealing the Glass-Steagall Act made them all possible. Second of all, without a new Glass-Steagall Act, another financial collapse may occur. And finally, the Dodd-Frank Act is insufficient to protect the economy. For these reasons, I urge you to vote in favor of this bill. The Great Recession had many causes, but had bad banking practices enabled by repealing the Glass-Steagall Act made them all possible. According to James Rickards, a hedge fund manager, on August 7, 2012, it is true that the financial crisis has enough blame to go around. Borrowers were reckless, brokers were greedy, rating agencies were negligent, customers were naive, and the government encouraged the fiasco. But the biggest culprit of all were the big banks. Without the banks providing financing to mortgage brokers and Wall Street while underwriting their own issues of toxic securities, the entire pyramid scheme may have never got off the ground. It was the Glass-Steagall Act that prevented the banks from using insured depositories to underwrite private securities and dump them on their own customers. This ability, along with financing provided to all the other players, was what kept the bubble machine going for so long. Second, without a new Glass-Steagall Act, another finance collapse is inevitable. According to James Rickards, now when memories are fresh, it is time to reinstate the Glass-Steagall Act to prevent a third cycle of fraud on customers. Without the separation of banking and underwriting, it's just a matter of time before banks repeat their well-honed practices of originating garbage loans and stuffing them down customers' throats. Congress had the answer in 1933, but lost its way in 1999. Finally, the Dodd-Frank Act is insufficient to protect the economy. According to Adam Levitin, a law professor at the Georgetown University, said in the Washington Post, on the minus side, the failure of other federal bank regulators to agree on the definition of the qualified residential mortgage exemption from the Dodd-Frank Act's credit risk retention for securitization has contributed to the uncertainty about the future of the housing finance market, which is the Dodd-Frank Act's unaddressed elephant in the room for financial regulatory reform. For these reasons, Senators, I urge you to vote in favor of the bill. Thank you, and I'm now open to questions.
Questions? Senator, according to Paul Krugman, the Nobel laureate economist, he doesn't find any relation between the financial crisis and the provisions of the Act. So what makes you believe that it's the lack of those regulations that led to the collapse?
Well, the provisions of the Act separates the different types of financial institutions. They can't, like an investment bank, cannot branch off into retail banks. What happened was banks, while not under this act, became too big, and when they started lending to high-risk people, when they failed, the entire banking system went under.
Yeah, but can't we do it without separating that? It's just that
I don't think that's possible, because under the provisions of the current act, it's insufficient to protect the economy.
Senator Gupta, by repealing already the Dodd-Frank Act, the banks are complaining that it's too restrictive and it's restricting the funding for small businesses, and they're not able to get the loans what they need to operate their businesses. And also the housing market itself is very against this Dodd-Frank, as well as the current restrictions that are on the roads, that they cannot lend. That's restricting big time the housing market. How do you respond to that? That's not good for the economy.
Yes, but if the economy collapses again, then that's even worse for the economy, because everything was going well under the Glass-Steagall Act. It worked. But when they repealed it, that's what caused the financial collapse of 2008. So would you rather have a financial collapse or some companies complaining?
But Senator, don't you think the collapse was because people broke rules? So rules were in place, it's just they did not follow them.
It wasn't that they broke rules, it was because there weren't rules in place, because the financial collapse happened when banks started lending to high risk customers. So when they were lending, it wouldn't have happened if we had separated all the institutions.